Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Keeping Tabs. I'm your co-host, Zach Viscomi, and joining me as always is local real estate expert, Tabitha Heit. And Tab, great to have you on today. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation.
Well, me as well, and clearly I have a blurred background right now because I'm not in my normal office on the road today.
Yeah, well that's actually because you do so much for your clients, and so you were out and about and meeting inspectors and all sorts of things. And so we're going to actually talk today about how to choose a real estate agent, right? It's something that can really make or break your real estate experience. And so, with the market the way that it is, and even when it's not, like, how do you know how to choose the right person for you and your situation and really work with somebody that you can trust? And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, and I'm really excited to do that with you. So let's go ahead and get started. I know, look, the market is what the market is, whether it is booming or it's not. I mean, it is what it is, and so we've all got to navigate it as best we can. And I know, like, when things are going really good, it's easy for every single agent to look good, right? Because things are hot, things are moving, things are quick. But it's when things start to get challenging, or when the market is shifting, or when things are different, is when it's really important to make sure that you work with somebody, especially locally, who knows what's going on and knows how to really be able to position you best, whether you're a buyer or a seller. So Tab, I've got just a handful of questions that I'm curious, what are some things that people should look for and pay attention to? One of the things that I hear all the time, and I think we could probably start here, is people always want to get the most for their home. Like that's it. It's like, if I'm selling my home, I want to get as much as I possibly can for it. I mean, if I'm buying a home, I want to pay the least amount as possible for it, right? And so a lot of times what real estate agents will do, and I've heard this a lot from people, it's like they'll tell you whatever price it is that you want to hear, whether or not it's right. And so can you kind of walk through a little bit of, what people should look out for and how to overcome maybe some of those challenges that they might not even know is troublesome?
So I think, beware of someone that just comes in, asks what you want for your house, and then just goes off of that price without giving you data. I will provide a CMA, like most agents will provide. It's a comparative market analysis, and we go through, and that'll provide a range. And when I get to the home and actually see the house itself, then we can talk about where we think that this house fits on the range. I have lost deals, or not gotten a listing based on me disagreeing with the price completely. And it's okay, I think, sometimes to walk away from that situation, because as an agent, there's a lot of money to be spent once we get a house and we start listing it, and there's photos and there's videos and there's money that starts coming out of the agent's wallet. And if I feel like the price that the seller wants is not realistic, and I'm going to not be able to sell it for that and potentially disappoint them, those are the times that you have to have honest conversations and decide if you want to go that route or not. There's other times where, we might be slightly off in price, and I'll say to the seller, let's try your price if you really want to try your price. And then if it doesn't sell within a certain period, this is the plan, and the plan shouldn't really be, let's reduce a couple $1,000s, until it sells, and who knows when that'll be. There really should be strategic plan on, if it doesn't sell based on the market within, say, 10 days in this market, if we're not getting any action, then let's strategize on what that next move would be, and let's go for it. I'll tell you a story that just occurred in this situation where exactly that the clients wanted to list it at a certain price. It didn't move. We reduced to the price that I had suggested, and we had a bidding war, which actually took us above the price they wanted. So it's really strategy in pricing, and sometimes sellers don't want to believe that or give hope, because what if that didn't happen, and then you started lower, and there's a lot of hesitation sometimes with sellers on gambling that. But we reduced it $15,000 and ended up $2,000 above their first list price. So sometimes it's just where you really got to price it to move it, and knowing agents that know the market, know the trends, work with buyers too. They know what the consumer's out there, what they're looking for. And a lot of times it's pricing strategy just went way wrong. So that's an important, pricing obviously is usually, in this market that we're still in right now, if something's sitting for some time, it's usually because it just wasn't priced appropriately. Now, could there be a horrible smell in the house? Could there be issues with the house? Yes. But in this market, there's usually a buyer for everybody in every house. So if it's priced appropriately, it should sell.
So I'm curious from your perspective, what is it that people don't know that real estate agents do? So like, I'll give you an example for me. I bought my house 10 years ago and it was my first home, right? And so when I think about working with a real estate agent, I have an idea now of obviously talking with you and learning a lot, that obviously pricing is a huge part of this, but I don't really get that until I get a listing package from them or until they kind of give me an idea. And so, but then like, even then it's like, well, what else should I look for? Like, what are some things that people don't even know to look for that a good agent does that doesn't show up on paper?
So when I go do the walkthrough with the client, when I'm meeting them for the first time, after we have a conversation, I usually walk through the house myself without them, just to get take some notes. And at the end of my day, I usually shoot them an email and sum up what I've noticed about the house and things that they could take the time to change. So I'm walking around, and there's sometimes little things like making sure all the light bulbs match in the house and make sure you're replacing light bulbs and some touch-up paint. And I do a list for them that's somewhat organized so that they have ideas on what they can do to start prepping their house. All the townships in this area are very different with the resale requirements. And if you don't know them and your agent hasn't discussed them before you list your property, you might be shocked to find out, hey, you have some work to do now that you have a buyer under contract and the township just said you have to do all this stuff. So I try to get ahead of that, and I'll print out the list of requirements on the township that they're going to be responsible for when they sell the property. Some things they can start fixing now, so that when the inspector goes in, it's done. But that gives them a heads up on, this is required to sell your property, this is the cost of that application fee, and this is what's going to be looked at, so that they can start getting ahead of that. Because once there's a buyer under contract, things start to move pretty quickly, and you don't want to be held up based on something that got flagged that you could have fixed prior. So knowing those things and preparing the packet so that the clients can get ahead of a lot of these situations.
And so you mentioned a couple things earlier that come out of your pocket, at least initially, and everything too, about photos and doing the presentations and all that kind of stuff. And so I know on some level marketing plays a role in this process. So like how does somebody know? Like, I didn't even realize that agents do that. Like, I thought it just basically went up on Zillow and that was kind of it. So
Right.
So kind of talk with me a little bit about like what the marketing process is, like what should people understand about that and look for and know that is good or not good or otherwise.
Yeah, listen, there are some agents that just take pictures with their iPhones and post them on, and I sometimes see pictures the wrong way, so you want to look out for that, because you really don't want to showcase your house like that. The most eyes on your house are usually going to happen the first couple weeks of it being on the market, the first couple days really. So you want your photos to look really sharp from the beginning, because that's what people are going to see the most as being a new house on market. So typically, I have a listing coming up next week. We're contingent upon selling. We're under contract as a buyer. We're contingent upon selling her property, which is really hard. Contingencies are extremely hard in this market, but we got it accepted that way. So now I have to hustle because the house wasn't fully ready to be on the market. So the seller of that house is doing all the things she needs to do, touch up paint, do the lights, get it ready. And then we'll get a photographer in there. We'll do video, we'll do floor plans. And hopefully within 24 hours, I'll get all that stuff back and then be able to load it onto all the sites that buyers are searching and try to promote it that way. So it is, all agents have different budgets based on what they want to spend to market their properties for their clients. I do use a pretty large marketing budget because I think it creates the first impression of the house. It gives people a vibe and it grabs them in. So I think it's very important. And it's a big part of the budget that that is allotted to my clients.
That's cool. Yeah, I had no idea that was even a thing. So
Yeah.
And you kind of mentioned something else here where you're working with a client, you're contingent, right? So you're representing the buyer and selling your home now, and that's really difficult in this market, obviously, with the way that things are, but you're able to get it accepted. And so that made me think, like, there's probably so much negotiating and things that like you have to do with the other agent and all that kind of stuff. Like, talk to me a little bit about how experience and knowledge and things like that play a big role in negotiating.
Yeah, I mean, it's important because the agent that is representing the property that my client's going to buy and has to have hope that I'm going to pull through and have everything organized. So I had to show them comps. I had to explain what that market's going to be like, how many days on market we should expect, and we have to price it right. Like, they don't want to know that I have an unrealistic seller on my end who's going to want this certain price and then it's not going to move. So talking to the agent saying we're going to price it appropriately to get it under contract quick. The reality is, if it's not under contract within a certain period, the seller reserves the right to terminate the agreement. So it's a lot of moving parts to do it this way. And because we've been in a market that we haven't seen that many home sale contingencies, it's kind of like, getting back into the groove of making sure everything is ready to go. Normally, when this situation occurs, when I have a buyer that I know off the bat is going to need to sell their property, I usually have a little bit more time to prepare, where I'll say, okay, let's get your pictures done now. Let's get the property ready to go so that as soon as we find your house on the buy side, it's really just me pressing a button and saying it's listed. We're here. So usually I prepare a little bit more time with this situation. The house just came up. My client wasn't really looking, but it just worked. And now we're moving fast. But in typical situations, when I do have buyer clients, this is part of the consultation that I provide with them. Like, are you contingent? Okay, let's get this ready fully to go so that I can show them I've got pictures done, I've got floor plans done, we are ready to push the button on this, and we'll get it on the market tomorrow. So a little bit more planning is ideal, but if not, if we don't have the ability, which sometimes you don't, sometimes people have relocation things that come up and they got to move quick, and it just has to happen. So you need an agent that's able to bend.
So we've been talking a little bit here about sellers and what to look for a little bit there, but like, I'm curious now for buyers too, since you mentioned some of that, like what do buyers look for in an agent? Like, what is it that they should know, where things are a little bit different in their process?
I think they have to vibe with the person. They have to feel comfortable where they might be with this person for a long time. They might be a couple offers in and they got their house and they're done in a couple months, or it might be 2 years looking for a property. So vibing, just overall vibe is important. Time, so if you're someone that works 9 to 5 and you can only work nights, and I can't work nights, I do work nights, but say I couldn't, then that probably wouldn't work for the type of agent that you're looking for. If you're somebody that likes text communication and I'm not a texter, then that might not work. Like, ask communication style. What's your communication style? Do you want a phone call? Do you want a text? Do you want an email? What's your preferred method? I'm finding lately more it's text. I think people are over the phone calls and email, like they just don't want to be. So a lot of my clients, especially if they're married, like a married couple, we do group text if that's an easier way. But timing, experience, negotiation skills, you got to ask these questions of your potential agent. And I think we've spoken about this before, is, you should interview a couple agents, 2 to 3 agents, and see who you vibe best with and who you feel is going to take you to find your place.
Yeah, I feel like, one of the things that I've seen a lot of is we live in a market where we're all very skeptical. I think just of people, like, of whether or not someone's authentic or real or trying to take advantage of us. And I think to some extent, real estate remains one of those areas that people just don't know a lot about, or don't have a deeper understanding of what to look for. And so, I think for you, from your perspective, like what what is something that people may be able to look out for, pick up on, that could maybe tell the difference between someone who's there to really serve their clients versus somebody who's there just trying to get the transaction and move on?
Well, I think if you walk through properties and you might run into other people and other agents and you might see people that are just like, this house is great, you should get it. Let's just put an offer in. And is it great? Did you not see water signs of intrusion? Did you not see water stains on the thing? Did you point those out to your clients? Some agents might skim over some of the things that buyer should be for sure pointed out and said, are you okay with this? Are you okay with the fact that this might be a roof issue, and that you might need to fix this at some point? Are you okay with your wallets if that's the case? And I think it's having the conversation that doesn't, not just transactional, because obviously for agents this is a living, and some people do it part-time, some people do it full-time, and it's not just this transaction. And I think looking for an agent that it's not just about this transaction, and a lot of times it's having your client walk away from a deal, because the red flags, as an experienced person, what this could lead to if they make this mistake. So, I think in this market, I've come across a few people that have purchased houses in the last few years that made mistakes, that have called me looking to sell later. Like, they got represented by somebody that didn't lead them in the right directions, and they are now underwater because they didn't allot for the what ifs. They just waived everything. They did these things, and now they want to sell their property, and they're not in the best situation. So I've had those phone calls come up, and they have big regrets on who they had represent them through that situation. So I think it's important to look at reputation, because at the end of the day, it's past this transaction, the relationship, hopefully. The reality is most people buy multiple homes throughout their lifetime, and the goal is hopefully you liked your service with me and you're going to use me for the next house or recommend me to somebody, is the hope. So I have an eyes of just looking at things not just on this transaction, but this is a longer relationship, and that's what they should look out for.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because what I heard was you want to look for an agent who is going to challenge you, but like challenge you for your own good, not just to challenge you, but rather it's kind of like yes people, right? Where it's just sort of like, yeah, take it, this is great, this is good,
Yeah.
because as opposed to like, hey, listen, I know this checks a lot of boxes for you, but here's some of those red flags, and like being that,
Right.
even if you have to deliver the disappointment, it's that honesty and integrity that like is better in the long run, so you don't end up like some of the people you're talking about now.
Yeah, and it's, in this market, approach changes. Like, I have buyers that we're starting to talk about, we've been looking for some time, and they're coming from a different market, and they're just kind of thrown off with what the PA market has been. And it's like, maybe we need to switch our strategy. Like, maybe you either need to figure out that, one, you need a house that needs renovation, and have a mindset of, I don't want the perfect house right now, but I can make it the perfect house. Or maybe we need to step back and say, what could be a house that I would be happy in for 5 years? Because maybe that's a townhome versus a single family home in the location that I want, based on what the market's showing me right now. Like, we might need to re-strategize and see what that looks like. And it's having an agent that's gonna have those conversations with you and be like, okay, you're right. Maybe competing with 10 offers every weekend is starting to get old, and maybe we need to switch up the plan. Because there's a lot of buyers too. I mean, in this market, we're still seeing a lot of waived inspection. We're still seeing, over asking and things like that. If a client and a buyer's ready for that, okay, we can do that. But if you're not that client that doesn't want to waive inspections, I respect that. And then we have to change strategy at times, because we can keep trying the same thing, but after a while, it's probably, unless the market changes, it's going to yield the same result. So, we talk to clients about that, and they have to be comfortable with, I am going to waive or I'm not going to waive, and the agent should support them on that. And also tell them when they really shouldn't waive, and walk away. instead of agents that just say wave, wave, wave. I will never forget, I was getting my nails done, and the worker was telling me, she's like, oh, you're in real estate? I said, yeah. She goes, oh, I'm buying a house. And there was a language barrier, and I don't think she understood that she didn't understand that she was waiving inspection. So she was asking me, I was waiting for my inspection, and it never happened. And when I spoke to her, I was like, you waived inspection. She didn't understand that she did that. So really, agents' responsibilities are explaining contracts and what they're signing up for, and make sure that they're doing their job by fully having that client understand what they're doing.
That's I would say that's a huge point that I'd want to lean on a little bit here, in that good agents will educate and explain and guide and prepare you. Like, it's like I've heard you so many times now. I mean, we've done 10 episodes, right? Like, it's and even in between.
Is this 10?
This is number 10.
Oh, wow.
But I've heard you say, in multiple different ways in different times, like how much you educate your client on the market, on the pricing, on this. It's like you're constantly giving them information and communicating with them. And then when you're talking about the lady who's doing your nails here, like, here's a great example of, like, I've heard horror stories of agents who are they're rushing people, they're pressuring them. They're like, don't worry, I got it. They're not explaining it. It's like they're holding the cards close to their chest because they're doing stuff like that, where they know it's going to speed up the transaction process, but it's going to end up screwing the client in some way, shape, or form, or, and maybe they're not even trying to do it in a mean way, or it's just like, they're just moving fast. And so they're trying to just pump them out. But it's like, you don't want to be just another number, right? Like you, especially with an asset like that. So I just, you said it so many times, but I just feel like calling that out is important. Like, the time that you take to really educate people and show them, what they need to know is really important.
And I think another part of that too is like explaining the budget properly too, because sometimes with these lenders, if you don't go local, they just give a pre-approval. They give this buyer a pre-approval for X amount, and what does that even mean? Like, so you put an offer in, and if you didn't take the time to tell your client, okay, I understand you're pre-approved for this, but what is it going to cost you monthly? If you don't take the time to review that before you put the offer in, they could be very shocked. Like, you could be looking at house taxes that are $10,000, $4,000, that monthly payment itself would be very different. So, having your agent make sure that they do a worksheet prior to you submitting an offer, so you have an estimate of what that monthly payment is going to be. Not just write an offer, oh yeah, we're pre-approved, and have no idea what you just signed up for per month. So that's also important. And the other reason that's important too is sometimes those loans don't go through. Like, sometimes the taxes are too high and you're under contract, and now the lender's like, oh yeah, they can't afford that. So making sure that you have relationships with whoever that lender is going to be, local or not, to have those conversations, because you can go under contract, your buyer could start spending money on inspections, and then all of a sudden the lender's like, yeah, your debt to income ratios are too high with these taxes, and no one meant to catch that. So it's really important that the agent understands debt to income ratio numbers and understands your finances, so that it's not just a pre-approval letter. Yes, I'm pre-approved to buy this house. There's a lot more that goes into it.
That's that kind of brings up an interesting point for me here too, is just the amount of communication. I'm sure, you're constantly, like, I know you're texting, you're doing this, you've got your irons in the fire all the time, but like, what are some things to watch out, from a communication standpoint? Like, what's a reasonable expectation that somebody should have in the process of working with an agent versus, like, again, I've heard stories of people just like, I was reached out to this guy or this gal, and like, I heard some of this and then I heard that, and then we ended up working together, and then the communication just kept getting worse and worse, and it's like, where are they? Like, are you working on anything? Like, what's happening? So how much does communication play a role in, like, watching out for or paying attention to that?
I mean, I'm communicating with clients probably daily. So all my buyers, I look at their portal usually 3 times a day. So I get houses sent to me, and then I send them out to them. So I usually look morning, noon, and dinner time. and send out whatever has come out new to them. If something's great, I'm usually texting them daily. Like some of my active buyers, they might hear from me daily. Sellers, depends on the situation. The people under contract right now, some need more assistance than others, but every couple days, at least at the very minimum. And if I'm actively looking for a buyer, they're getting something from me daily, some type of communication. So I'm accessible, I'm here, I do this full time. So my clients know they can call me late, early, weekends. It's just the way it is. It's just the way this industry is, and it's really like there are some people that are like, I don't work weekends. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. But the majority of my business happens on weekends. So I don't, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I would say in kind of summarizing all of this and bringing a lot of it together, at the end of the day, working with somebody who does this as their full-time job, there's a number of different trade-offs and things that you get by selecting someone different than that. And then also working with somebody who's in the market and understands this particular market. Because I'm sure you can attest, like, you work in Montgomery County, you work in Philadelphia, like Bucks and surrounding areas, and it's like you have a really strong understanding of this geographical region. And it's like, how they're micro markets, like every area is different.
It is.
How that works. And so understanding those nuances is also really important.
Yeah.
So is there anything so far that like we've kind of left out that you feel like is something that people should know or look for? Or it seems like
I think I think we hit them all. You just have to ask as many questions as possible and feel as a buyer, you should feel very informed and empowered to make this jump. You should really understand what your finances are going to be, and hopefully your agent led you down that. You should really understand the market, and you should have a sense of like, I feel empowered to buy based on what the agent just said to me, or my conversation with the agent. As a seller, you got to feel comfortable that, it's probably your biggest asset, one of your biggest assets. Of course, we all want it to sell for as high as possible. I think for some sellers, of course, we would want it to sell for $100,000 more, because that would be more money in our wallet. But the reality is that we're going to make a suggestion based on what we think will sell it in the quickest conditions for the most amount of money that we feel it's worth. And we know what it appraises, potentially could appraise for. That could be a thing. So you should trust your agent to hopefully walk you down. And if something just sounds too good to be true, like if you've interviewed 3 agents to list your home and one agent is like 100,000 over everybody else, you should really look at is that factual?
Watch out for that. It's a trap. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like I would say, here's a great example. You could see I'm like super sunburned and kind of peely here, but we don't know what we don't know. And so I went with a buddy of mine. We climbed up Mount Rainier. It was snow covered. We didn't use any sunscreen. We didn't have any gear. And so we got
What was
really
the temperature?
Sunburn. It was like 60, 70 degrees down here. And then the further we got up, by the time we got to 10,000 feet, it was like 32 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah. But the sun, like the atmosphere is thinner up there, and so the sun's reflecting off the snow and literally burning you, and so here I am. But it's like I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know the questions to even ask. Right. And so like you've got to work with somebody like an agent who's going to tell you the things even when you don't know to ask for them. Right. And so it's that person who's going to educate, who's going to be there for you, who's consistently communicating, right, and doing all of those things that we talked about today. Otherwise, you're going to end up burned. Like that's my point, right? Like you don't want to end up burned. Your face is one thing, your wallet's something completely different. So
that's right.
Cool.
That's right. No, don't get burned.
Yeah. Well, good. Listen, I appreciate it. And kind of talking with you and unpacking a little bit of what people should pay attention to. And like you always say, it's your rule of 3. Like make sure that you interview 3 people. Don't speed through this process, and find somebody who you really connect with is really at the core of all of that.
Because you really got to trust that person, and you should get a good, like getting a good read about like who's going to take you through this journey. So sometimes it's just feeling, like you just feel like connected to a different, certain agent, and they're going to lead you through. So
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Tab, again for sharing this information with us. And thank all of you, as always, is tuning in. Hopefully you found this helpful. Please like, subscribe, share. If you're interested in interviewing Tabitha or finding out some more, you can obviously check out our website, and we're more than happy to help however we can to do that. And just remember, right, the best real estate agents are not the ones who are just going to tell you what you want to hear and make it look really rosy and great, but they're going to be honest with you and help you make the best decision for you. And that's what this is all about, and why we continue to keep tabs and keep it real on real estate. So thank you all.
thank you.